There is blind justice, and then there is trading justice, so that you can finally afford to get that laser eye surgery. Not only will people find you more attractive once you ditch those old glasses, you'll be able to see your charts better. That's what we call win-win. Speaking of winning, it's time for a little trading justice, brought to you by TackleTrading.com.
Welcome to the Trading Justice Podcast presented by Tackle Trading. My name is Matt Justice. I am your host along with my co-host, Tim Justice. I just wanted to say thank you to all the great listeners out there listening to all those amazing episodes of the Trading Justice Podcast. Once again, a 5-star rated podcast, according to iTunes anyway.
You know, Matt, I'm doing great, and I'm excited to be here. I had the good opportunity of interviewing one of our students. We're going to be featuring that interview at the end of this podcast here, and I'm excited for people to be able to listen to it.
Really? Do tell. Tell me who is it? What you guys talk
being
about?
A mentor, being a trader, having the mindset that I do, that I know you share, we have the good fortune of being able to network with people and bring people into our life from diverse backgrounds and different perspectives. And Shelle Schaefer is a student of yours and mine who's been with and around our classes for quite a bit of time. She's gone through some personal challenges, some successes, failures, and here she is at the end of it, still standing and moving forward with a great attitude. And I love stories like that.
Tim, I've known Shelle now for about a year and a half. She actually, and I have not listened to your interview yet, so I'm looking forward to listening to it. But just from my perspective, Shelle Schaefer is an amazing person. She has such a wonderful spirit, a wonderful mentality, and a lot of it is born out of some degree of pain, And I guess that's how we all kind of start our journeys to success, is out of some degree of pain. But she did have some personal challenges, and she's worked her little tail off for the last year, trying to get a handle on her business and trading and everything out there that's going out in her life. And I think more people, if more people can learn from somebody's stories, then I hope I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm looking forward to listening to it, because I think our listeners could learn something from Shelle's journey.
Well, I do as well. One of the things I love about doing this podcast with you, Matt, is that we get to talk to each other. We get to bitch about the world. We get to talk about politics and sports and whatever we want to do, and mostly markets and investing. But really, the people we get to bring in and have those conversations with. They might be economic theorists. They might be institutional traders. They might be business owners. They come from so many different backgrounds. That's one of my favorite parts about this, that we're doing is we're building and we're developing not only our own network and our power team from it as well. Yeah, it was a compelling interview. I think you're going to like it a lot.
Oh, I guarantee I am. I've talked to Shelle more times than I can count, and I'm sure it was a good interview. And so I can't wait to listen to it back there on the podcast. So we'll get to that here in just a second, Tim. I do want to talk to you about the news out there. We talked last week about one central bank. We talked about the Swiss National Bank with a couple of hedge fund guys, and Dave and Andrew. This week, it's you and I to talk about another central bank. And guess what we get to talk about next week, too? Yet another central bank. It's like we can't get rid of these guys yet. Man, I just wish all the bankers would get together just one time, and just never come back. But outside of that, Tim, the ECB on Thursday morning of last week, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, reported a major announcement that we have been looking forward to in the markets for quite some time. Tim, talk about what the ECB did and how you think it's important in the global market right now.
I think this is a really good teaching opportunity, because I will say out front, I am not an economist. I am a trader, and I'm just the kind of guy that knows how to take information in, process it, and use it. Now, saying I'm not an economist, what I mean by that is I'm not like some PhD economist that could go up in front of Harvard Law and teach all the theory behind it. I'm fascinated by it.
And honestly, though, the funny thing is you could probably do that better than they could do it, and yet we would not categorize either one of us as an economist.
Oh yeah, no, that's what I was going to say.
We understand economic theory and the application of economic theory as well as those people that get out there and teach people in college. But I get what you're saying, but I just think it's kind of funny.
Well, and one of the reasons I say that, Matt, just real simply, is that I know we have a diverse listenership that might be new. And whenever you get into economic theory and you start dropping $25 words, it can sound really intimidating. And the thing I want to reinforce here, and I want to tell a story, is because the ECB had an event last Thursday morning here. My time, it was 6:30 a.m. You were in Washington, D.C., so it was 8:30 your time. And do you say his name Draghi? How do you say his name?
Luigi Draghi. He's not even good enough to be a Mario.
Right. I like going for the joke. I always go for the bit. I like that. So
I didn't plan that. It just made sense. Did it work?
It did. It worked for me.
Okay, good. He's not even good because back to like Mario Kart and Mario Brothers and Super Mario, dude. Mario was the good one, right? Mario was the good one?
They were both the good ones, dude.
Luigi was not. Well, yeah, but which one was the one you remember? You don't remember Luigi.
Well, if you play it one player, you're always Mario. So
Exactly.
you had to play it as Luigi, you had to go 2-player mode, and you were always the second controller. So
Yeah,
maybe they did say Mario.
I don't think I needed to explain the parameters of the joke. I think the joke worked.
You got it. All right. Anyway, so last Thursday morning, this event is happening, right? And when you're trading in real time, you can't stop and slow down and read the economic theory behind what is happening. You see the headline, you process it, you see the action on the chart, and you trade the chart. You know, and if you look at the euro dollar chart, and you can go back and look at this. I mean, this is in January of 2015. You'll be able to find the event. Is pretty compelling and powerful as to what actually went down on that chart, Matt. The event came out. They announced they're going to do quantitative easing. The euro's already in free fall. It's been crashing for a long time. The thing dropped about 500 pips, you know, and I'm not even talking tail to tail. I mean, from tail to tail, from the event to there is like 550 pips.
You know, Tim, I was live trading it. It was 8:30 Eastern. I had not started my event yet. As many people know, I'm a speaker, a financial speaker for RichDad Education, which in my estimation is Robert Kiyosaki, Kim Kiyosaki, RichDad. They are the absolutely most amazing people I've ever known, heard about. And it's such an honor to speak for such an absolutely amazing quality organization. But so I'm sitting there up at my event, and there's an individual by the name of Randall Davidson. And Randall Davidson, Randall. I love Randall, the nicest guy in the history of mankind. I'm not kidding. I will never meet anybody that says a bad word about Randall. Right. I'll meet people that say bad words about me. I'll meet people that say bad words about you. Randall's nice. You know, I'll never meet anybody who says a bad word about Randall. He's just that type of guy. Well, so Randall has been in financing for 25 years. He's basically been in every shape of every successful industry in his career. Widely successful himself. Just an awesome guy. Well, so Randall's sitting up and he's like, what are you doing? You know, and I'm like, well, I'm getting ready to trade the ECB event. He says, how you doing it? I said, okay, watch this. So it comes out, right? Mm-hmm. And for some reason, Tim, these central bankers, I swear to God, I already can't stand them. They're the devil. Draghi, Yellen, Bernanke, Greenspan, you know. And however, I'm so paranoid over how the one guy corrected us from saying the Japanese prime minister's name. But, you know, any of them, they can all go to hell in my estimation. However, one thing that upsets me more than anything, because they can just go to hell based on their economic parameters and what they're doing to the value of currencies and the race to the bottom and the massive manipulation and all that.
Satan's spawn, right?
Trader,
yeah, I got
yes,
it. Right.
Yes. As a trader, though, okay, what they do represents an opportunity, right, to trade. And because it's a news-based trade, we teach it in our trading system and whatnot. And so I'm getting up there, getting ready to trade this news-based trade called the European Central Bank, and they don't announce at 8:30.
It took some time, didn't it? They weren't right on time.
Nothing moved. And I'm sitting there staring at it, and I'm on a time crunch, Tim.
You're like, I got to start this thing.
Teaching at 9 o'clock, okay? And this thing is going to take some time, right? So I'm like, what is going on? 1 minute, 2 minutes, the chart's not moving. I'm checking my internet to see if my internet's working. Chart's not moving. I'm just like, what is going on? I'm like, am I right? I double checked the economic calendar. I'm like,
which you had already checked 50 times. You already knew.
50 times, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm ready for this, right? And all of a sudden, I'm just staring at it. And all of a sudden, that sucker moves 60 pips in a matter of seconds.
Well, you know what it did, Matt? What's interesting is that it ran up and took out a few tight stops first, and then it started to crash, right? Yeah, and you see that around these news events every now and then.
It does happen. And so it starts to crash, right? I make my first initial trade and got a bad fill as pips widen on these types of events all the time. So almost everybody gets a bad fill. Anyway, retail investors get a bad fill. So anyways, I get a bad fill on it, but I'm still showing a good profit after the first 2 minutes. Okay. And then all of a sudden that sucker reverses 60 pips the other way. Okay. And I'm getting hammered in the trade. And I'm like, what just happened? I didn't have time to go see what they actually did. Right. I'm just trying to read the movement here because it's so fast. So I'm like, did they not do it? What's going? I mean, this isn't like an economic event where they have a number that just gets priced in, like the unemployment report just gets priced in the number because they actually have a statement, right? And then they have the interview afterwards and all that. Well, it moves the other way. It triggers my trailing stop. So I get stopped out at a loss on the first one. And I'm thinking, what the world? This is like 3 minutes into the trade. And so I'm like, okay, it starts hitting down again. I do it again. Okay. Pummels down another like 60 pips. Right.
Yep.
And so I'm in the trade again. I'm like, okay, this is awesome. I'm showing a good profit in it. Randall is literally has his hand on his mouth because he cannot imagine the volatility of the movement. He's like seeing this candle because it's on a 1 minute chart. He's seeing
just
this candle.
Boom, boom, boom. I mean, it's rattling off. Yeah, and that's where the emotions and what you're talking about here, Matt, I want to stop for a second. Just think about it. You've been trading 10 years. A new trader, you finally get in there and the volatility picks up.
Well, even Randall, it was testing me a little bit. But Randall's like, I can't believe this. And Randall's been trading for years, right? He trades iron. He did his first iron condor this weekend, but he's been trading in the stock and options market for a very, very long time successfully. But he's never seen a movement like this in the currency market. And so I'm trying to explain it to him while I'm trading. And all of a sudden, I get stopped out again. This time at a gain, okay? So this is like within the first 5 minutes, right? I have two trades. One gets stopped out at a loss. One gets stopped out a gain. So finally, I make my third trade, okay, right before the event starts. And when the event starts, I show my presentation, so I can't actively manage it. So I just put my stop loss in, and on the first break, I pulled it up, and I'm like, oh, my goodness. That sucker, it hit my trailing stop along the way. I didn't capture all of the movement, but that sucker in that next 2 hours had moved over 250 pips.
Well, I think there's some important things here that I think we can highlight just from a conceptual standpoint to the listeners out there. Number one is that you need to learn to trade currencies no matter what you do. Currencies are not that complicated. There's about 8 major pairs if you include the New Zealand dollar. You got all the exotics as well, but you can focus on just a few products. I mean, this is the European Central Bank crossed against the U.S. dollar, the euro and the dollar, two of the biggest financial products in the world.
I think the pounding of the desk really emphasized it too. I thought
like doing that. And Matt, now that I got a fancy mic, I can even come back here and act like I'm like in a radio studio. I got the whole thing going on right now.
You got the whole deal going down, don't you?
But anyway, the other thing, Matt, is that you stuck with it, but you also set a stop loss. A new trader starts when the volatility kicks in, it can whipsaw their emotions. You said, I'm going to find a new entry. I'm going to stake with my core idea. Yes, I got whipsawed around on the first one. It didn't work. Got a bad fill. Some people would just beat themselves up. You know what the difference is, Matt? Experience and money management. Because when you trade at a level you're comfortable with, you just make the right decision. When you over leverage,
you make the right decision for your system.
Yeah.
You make it for your system. You don't like the emotions I was personally feeling had nothing to do with money. The emotions I had was more about the excitement of the movement and showing this new trader how quick this thing moves. To me, it was just price action because I've seen it before.
Sure.
But at the same time, I was just excited because of what Randall was seeing for the first time. But it was such a historic event. It really was. I mean,
let's get back to that for a minute, because what they did is very important. And I'm sure we're going to be talking about this all year in different forms and fashion, because this is the economic condition we're in. The ECB decided to start their quantitative easing program in March. And the number I saw, Matt, was $60 billion a month. And that's pretty hot and heavy that they're buying securities and whatever. I don't even know. Is it equities and bonds, or what are they buying?
I think it's mostly just bonds out of the different countries' bonds. But let's go back to the expectation. Okay, the expectation that I felt was in the market, because a lot of the expectation will be priced in. I mean, you hear 60 billion, and it's like, oh my goodness, that's going to be a major movement, and it was. But it wasn't just because it was 60 billion. If they had came out for the last 8 months and told us they were going to print 60 billion, it would not have been that big of a movement. Okay, the reason it was such a big movement is because the market was literally expecting somewhere around 50 billion, and they were expecting it to also have a cap on it. Okay, which meant they were going to have an end date to quantitative easing. They're going to have a cap on total spending and whatnot. Well, what they actually did was far north of that. They went 60 billion for with no cap. And so because of that, they're open-ended on it, which basically gives them the leeway to do what is very popular these days at the central banking level, to say things like, we can do whatever we need to do to help blah, 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 blah. And that's basically what they did. So because they went more liberal than what was expected in the market, that had to be priced into the market, and that's why you saw such a historic movement in the euro-dollar pair. And honestly, it was when you put it like this, it went 5 cents down. Okay, but when you think about 5 cents, that doesn't seem like a lot to people who don't understand currencies. To people who understand currencies, that's 500 pips. 500 pips, a 5% movement on a currency that moves only 1 cent, 1 cent, 1 cent. That is a huge movement. You are talking about trillions of dollars that exchange hands on that move. I mean, it was an unreal movement, and I think it's going to be something where that is going to be a dominant theme for this year. And I've been sick of central banks for 5 years now. We're just starting this cycle.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible what's happening in the currency markets, and is bleeding into everything that we see. And the volatility in this context is going to affect equities and commodities and all that. I mean, it is already crushed the crude oil market. We've seen the dynamics of that change. You see gold changing. If you're not watching currencies out there, guys, forget even trading them. I think you should trade them, but if you're not at least even watching them, please go put them on the chart. Go make sure that you're paying attention to what's happening in the currency markets, because
just to give you a little bit of a taste on that, I just got off a meeting with a couple other trainers, and we were talking about concepts, strategies, talked about those types of things. And most people, when they start learning how to trade, they're all about, well, let's first understand stock, let's understand options, and all of this jazz. And I just made a statement on the meeting. I said, well, what is the number one tradable instrument in the world? And they're like, well, bonds and equities are very popular. I didn't say popular. I said, what's the number one tradable instrument in the world? It's the U.S. dollar. That is the number one tradable instrument in the world. What's the number one trading strategy in the world? It's not a covered call. It's not a naked put. It's not long stock, short stock. It's the carry trade, which revolves buying and selling two different currencies in the currency market. And the thing about it is, Tim, most people, they'll be like, oh, trading currencies is so advanced, so difficult. And even to these traders who are veterans at trading stock and options, I said, well, how many of you have traded currencies? They're like, oh, I haven't traded currencies. I said, really? Weren't you just in London the other day? He says, yeah. I said, well, what'd you do with your currency? He says, well, I exchanged it. I said, well, what do you think we do in the currency market? I mean, it's the same stuff we're all doing already. Right. It's just doing it in a different market environment.
Well, and the skills also transfer over. I mean, money management, discipline, routine, structure, technical analysis, entry points, stop losses, it's all the same stuff. And, if you understand the core of the product and the cycle. So I think one of the transitions, Matt, is learning the banking cycle, learning the 24-hour market cycle, figuring out when this bank is open and how it affects that currency. Once you get that down, which you can get down pretty easily, then you can start to understand how to come up with a strategy, and it's like anything I've always said. I use that same phrase all the time. Practice what you don't know, trade what you do. And if you are new to currencies, just go out and practice them. Start working with them. Start doing something. Even just check the dollar every day. Check the dollar, euro, dollar, yen. Check those major cross pairs just every day.
Well, and just to kind of put it out there, we do teach an online training for Forex specifically. And if any listener here is interested in learning more about trading currency specifically, go to bed trades and bank open trades and the carry trade and everything we talk about here on the podcast, just let us know. We can get you into an online event. We do them for RichDad every couple weeks where we get on and just, really just teach people about trading currencies.
Well, and Matt, just to tease some of that, this Wednesday, the Federal Reserve, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, it may be in advance or behind you, but Wednesday, January, what is it, 28th? Yep, Wednesday, January 28th, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, the Federal Reserve has to announce their monetary policy.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Given what the ECB did, right?
Yep.
Given that they did something a little more, liberal than what we were all expecting. I'm sure the U.S. Central Bank knew what they were going to do. But does this change how the central bank is going to approach their monetary policy?
I don't think so. I think they've probably had those conversations. They are trading partners, and they're both part of political partners that back each other up pretty much. The G7 and all that. I don't think so. I don't think the Fed is going to be caught off guard from what the ECB did. Like you said, I believe they probably already knew it was coming down the pipeline. So I doubt they're.
Now that we got the ECB doing what they did, which was more than what we expected them to do. The Swiss just a week and a half ago unpegged the Swiss franc to the euro. I think that caught a lot of people off guard, maybe not at the central bank level. But, I guess my question coming into this event, because I haven't done my entire research yet coming into this event, but I was going to start doing that tomorrow. But coming into this event, does the U.S. Central Bank change their tone regarding when they're going to raise interest rates? I've already seen a little bit of it out there in the market saying maybe given what we're seeing out there, the Fed's not going to raise interest rates in, later second quarter, third quarter this year. Maybe they changed their tune just a little bit in terms of what they're specifically saying in their announcement. So even though I don't know what's going to transpire, I don't think anybody does. I am interested, and what I'm kind of looking forward to this week is not only trading that event, because I'll certainly be trading that event too on Wednesday in the news-based trade in the Forex market, but outside of that, just specifically as somebody who likes to be aware of central banking policy and how that impacts, what I do in the market, are they going to change their statement at all regarding interest rates? Because they took away the considerable time clause last time. They put forth a new clause that said not considerable time, but we're aware of things and blah blah blah. But are they going to change the wording? Because that's what people are going to be kind of fixated on, is the wording of the language of the announcement. And so that's kind of what I'm interested in. I don't think anybody knows what they're going to do, but are they going to change that wording?
Well, and there's two issues here, and what you're highlighting is very, very important. Number one, the trade opportunity. You have to just react to the chart, have a plan, react to the volatility, look for opportunities from that. And then after the dust settles, let's say when you're net clean or you've got your stop losses in and you're going to bed, the next day you wake up, you're still doing your trading, but then you got to dig into the why and maybe some of the longer term impacts as well. I think there's two phases to an event like this: reaction and then interpretation, right?
Yeah, reaction and then complete overreaction. I think that's the interpretation aspect of it.
Right. Well, you guys have been listening to the Trading Justice podcast with Matt and Tim. We're having some fun here talking currency policy, talking economic policy, the ECB, the Fed. And we got that interview coming up here in just a minute. Looking forward to putting that out there and letting people absorb really what Shelle, her story was all about, and her journey and some of her mindset. You know, Matt, we've got a lot planned for the podcast this year over at tackletrading.com, and we're excited about it.
Yeah, we do. We do have a ton going over there at Tackle Trading. Got a ton going over at the on the Trading Justice podcast as well. And there's some. If you want to check out Tackle Trading, check out tackletrading.com. You can kind of read at the testimonial section what some of our members think about what we're doing over there as well. And I think you guys will see that it can not only help them out as it's been doing, but it can help you out as well.
Yeah, and great picks from Coach Gino on the scouting report for pro members over the weekend, as well as the newsletter that I wrote. I enjoyed writing that people can go check out.
What was the topic? Let's talk about what'd you talk about in the newsletter?
Well, number one, the way I write is probably unique to me, but maybe not. Maybe it's the same way. I have a writing style where I try to gather all of the information and my thoughts. I don't just start, punching the keyboard. I plan an outline, I gather everything I want, and really the theme for this week was I was listening to some stand-up comedians last week, Matt, and I love stand-ups. And I thought, there's actually a very unique and interesting connection between becoming a great trader and becoming a great stand-up. Any unique stand-up, George Carlin, Louis C.K., Bill Hicks, who's one of my favorite, I think they have to work for a long time to find their voice, right? It is unique. You could take Louis C.K.'s set, you could give it to me, and I could memorize every word, delivery, timing. I'm still not going to be Louis C.K. And I think what it comes down to is there's the framework of how to structure a joke and how to stand on stage and how to deliver with confidence and all that. There's the structure of how to be a trader. There's always that base foundation, but at some level, to take it to a level of greatness, you've got to find your voice. And so I started with that, talked about that, different ways psychologically from a mindset standpoint to embrace that next transition from where you've got the fundamentals, but now you got to take it to another level. And I talked about that for a while. And then I also went through the details of what's going on in the market. I always like to take the newsletter and use some context and talk about some things on my mind. But I also dig in. At every week we do that, and we go through the charts on what's going on with gold and the dollar and the currency markets, and we show people the economic calendar to really prepare them for the week. And I had some fun writing it, and hopefully people enjoy reading it.
Yeah, and I've seen the comments after the newsletter, and they obviously did. I thought it was very, very well written. Totally got your analogies that you were doing with the comedians, and making sure that you're prepared and you plan and you work hard at it, and you don't just wake up one day and become a Louis C.K. You have to work at it. You have to work on your timing. You have to work on your system and whatnot. Totally made sense to him. It was an absolutely wonderful newsletter.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, and we got to wrap this one, buddy, and we got to get that interview up. And
you got the interview with Shelle, right? You got that going, and I'm certain we got another podcast coming out tomorrow, don't we?
I believe. Let's check with our producer, Phil. Phil's here with us. He's on silent, though.
How much I love the fact that we have a producer for the podcast now.
Yeah,
I can just
Phil's
now
doing
put on
awesome.
the headset and talk. I don't have to. I don't have to produce it. I don't have to schedule the guest. And which you know what that means, Tim? It means this is going to be an infinitely better podcast since I am terrible at all that stuff.
Well, it's the thing we say in life, Matt, in our mentoring and our trading. You got to bring people in to help you with stuff.
Yeah.
You can't grow something without creative and smart people around you. And hopefully Phil can be that for us. And I think he can.
Phil needs a nickname. We got to bring him on one of these podcasts to talk so the listeners can get to know Phil a little bit, and Phil will earn a nickname over time. Can't just get
you got to earn a nickname. That's right.
We got
to get him a mic first so he can come in and chat. Phil, actually, if you've got a mic, maybe we could interview you for the podcast tomorrow afternoon. I think that'd be cool, Matt.
Phil, what he's doing, what he's learned.
Yeah, what his role is.
How disgusted he is with our lack of organization at times. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Phil, you work on, let's talk after. I'll get you a mic. We'll get you set up. Whether we interview tomorrow or another time, we'll do it sometime. We'll make it fun. It won't be that big a deal. But, Matt, I got to bounce. I got to teach a class, man. I can't, when I believe in punctuality in life. I don't ever want to be late.
I agree with that. Everybody, you've been listening to the Trading Justice podcast presented by Tackle Trading. Check us out at the website, www.tackletrading.com.
Okay, welcome out to the Trading Justice podcast with your host, Tim Justice. We're here and we're excited to have a conversation here today. Just me and Shelle Schaefer, who is our guest from Oklahoma City. And Shelle runs the French Cowgirl. She's an owner and entrepreneur. She's been in the investing world since a long time, but she started taking stock classes in 2008. She took courses with RichDad Education. Some of her mentors were Matt Justice and myself, Ray Ostrander, who taught one of her original classes. And Shelle, from what our conversations have been over the years, that really opened up your mind. That was one of the first triggers that made you realize you needed to get involved in investing. And I just want to say hello and welcome.
Thank you.
It's good to have you today. Now, let's talk about your journey. Let's talk about what you're working on right now. You've been a business owner for how long? When did you open up that shop that you?
It was October of 2002.
Okay, and it's a retail shop from what I understand. I follow you on Facebook, and you and we've communicated about it over the years. So you were in the retail business, which isn't exactly an easy business, is it?
No, it is not. Lots of moving pieces.
Yeah. If somebody came to you and asked you, hey, should I go into retail, what would you tell them?
No. Unless they were already online so that they could earn money by not being in the store.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think that the way that people consume anymore, and also the way that you can create a presence out there, if you're a business owner, whether it's retail or services or whatever it is, I really believe you need an online presence, because that's where the marketing happens, and that's where, cost efficiency can happen. And you didn't learn that until late in the game, I believe. In fact, maybe even just the last couple of years, right?
Right. Well, I entered into French Cowgirl. I had two partners, and one lasted a month and the other one lasted a year. I had former experience as a media buyer for an advertising company right out of college. So I knew a little bit about marketing, and I knew that we needed to brand our name if we were going to do anything, and it had to be a name that people would remember. And I was successful in doing that with French Cowgirl. But the internet came along while I was up to my eyeballs trying to run the store and handle the jobs that were left to me by my other partners.
I'm a big believer in life and delegating. One of the things about capitalism and building a business and running a business is that if we don't use other people's talent talents and resources and help, we can feel like we're drinking from a fire hose. It sounds like that's some of your experience with French Cowgirl, is learning how to bring other people in a smart way, and build your business and build your power team, as they talk about quite a bit within mentoring. So at what point did you start bringing in other people to help take off some of the work and add ideas and marketing, and how did that go?
It did not go well because I could not find people that I found, mostly for me, I found people that oversold themselves. I operate at a very high level of integrity and energy, and if I'm given a job, I'm going to give it 110%. And honestly, I just was not able to find those people. So I found myself continually being the only person involved. In fact, if you asked people I had nice employees. I have some really good friends that were former employees, but they just did not have the entrepreneur mindset. They didn't have the tenacity that it takes sometimes.
Well, you know what? And I'll tell you, when you bring in friends and family and colleagues that are connected to you in a personal way, it always is a tough deal. It's not that it can't work. I grew up in a small town, and my family owned businesses. My mom and dad ran an insurance business. In fact, they sold home, health, life, auto, you name it. And they had two different offices, one in the community 20 miles north of us, and one in the one I grew up in the town. And, a lot of the people that worked for our family were people from our church, like my mom's friends would come in and be the secretary or something like that. And it's not always easy and I still remember as a young man seeing tense moments where my dad had to, tell somebody, this is how you need to do your job. But then there's a personal level there too. And I even picked up on it from a young age. Like, this is kind of weird, Dad. You shouldn't be talking to her like that. She's our neighbor, right? And it's not always easy to deal with that in life when you're bringing someone that you're connected in. And that's where I don't think it's a bad thing to maybe even, kind of try to avoid that. They say business and family doesn't necessarily mix. I know some people can make it work. But I've found, even building our businesses and building some of the opportunities that I have, I'd almost rather bring in somebody who's talented and motivated, that we can keep that distance, that business relationship and mindset about. Now, you spoke of the entrepreneurial mindset. Oh, God, that's so important, isn't it? I mean, you have to be driven on a daily basis to get up and keep pushing a business forward.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I definitely will not miss about owning a brick and mortar store, is that you are so subject to weather, you're subject to public sentiment on the economy, you're subject to construction in your area by your city. And that's actually why I decided to pull the plug on French Cowgirl, because the city has been talking for 3 years about closing down my street and to make it a walking district. Mm-hmm. And they were supposed to, at the meeting September 15th of last year, they were talking about starting construction October 15th. And I was like, wait a minute, do you not know about Black Friday? Do you not know how important the fourth quarter is for a retailer? And they were like, the councilman was actually like, no, I've never heard of Black Friday. And I was like, okay. And then when they showed me the renderings again, and again, they had the beautiful planter that they wanted to put in front of the store, in front of the double doors that we take big pieces of furniture out. And then also, again, about 10 feet in front of the front door. And I had asked them several times, I was like, that's just not going to work. Plus, they are taking a parking space away. And I only had 7 to begin with.
Well, I think that retailers around the country deal with interacting with government quite often. And you read about these stories in the paper, but it doesn't always connect to you in a real way. Your story is definitely, connecting with me that way. I'll tell you another one right here in Salt Lake City, where I have my office downtown, where I do a lot of my, mentoring for new investors and traders, whether it be currencies or options or futures or whatever it is. And right next to my office, there are a ton of like downtown sandwich shops and, places to go get a bite to eat because they facilitate the downtown business crowd, right? Well, our mayor, he is very green. He's very motivated. He's out there all the time, and he initiated a big construction project downtown, which created a bike lane, which on face value, I mean, of course, yeah, we want bikers to be safe. If you're out there on a pedal bike, you're not consuming oil and all that kind of stuff. I get it. The problem is the construction takes a long time. And then not only that, you said something that triggered with me. It takes away parking spaces. Because when you park at 45 degrees, you can get a lot more cars on the street. When you make them park horizontally because you've taken all this real estate away from the road, now there's less traffic that's going to these shops. I know one shop who's been there probably 15 or 20 years. I know the owner well. He might have to close because he has seen significantly less traffic. It's affecting his margins. And when you run a retail shop, you're operating on sometimes pretty thin margins, And so I wonder if these politicians really wrap their head around the impact that they have on certain small businesses when they push all
absolutely
these
don't, in
ideas
my
out there.
experience. Not only are the city construction people, they're not engineers, they're not general contractors, they're people that were hired maybe because they have the degree, I don't know, but the engineers, like one of the first things we looked at was grading and what they were going to do to the street, and what that would have done would have driven the water directly into the store, and they were surprised by that. And I was like, I'm not an engineer. I'm not, but anytime you create a crest in the middle of the road, the water's got to go someplace. And so that was frustrating. They're nice people, but they're government workers. They have their nice little comfortable government job, and they're just trying to be nice with contractors and engineers and to get the best price and maybe not the best end result.
Well, I've found in my life that government moves slow, but once a project gets going, it also moves very forcefully, because what happens is you have council meetings or town meetings or whatever it is, internal meetings. Somebody takes minutes. You're responsible to get something done while you're elected. And so this is the project we're working on. We're going to push it forward, right? And so they just keep kind of slowly moving forward, just the ooze that keeps, invading all of our space. And some of the initiatives, you're right. I mean, most of them, they have good intentions and all that, but I'm not sure they're entrepreneurs at that level. I really think government needs a good mix of different types of people to keep that check and balance in place. So fast forward, problems with the retail front, problems with the space, French Cowgirl, you just closed it down, but it actually was a positive for you. Explain that a little bit.
Positive for me in, not financially, it was positive for me in, I guess, in name recognition. It's trademarked, and even like when we were on the front page of the business section. And I'm not sure if this is where you want me to go with this or not, Tim, but we were on the front page of the business section, and just the awe of everybody when they found out that I was going to close. I had customers coming in just saying, I am so sorry. I forgot about you because of the construction at 36th and Western, or I didn't want to face the huge traffic jam like at 50th and Western back to the store. So I went to other areas. That has been affirming. I've met a lot of really great people, and I'm still maintaining the trademark, and in the hopes of maybe doing something online. We've got recognition nationally. We're in Toshin's book, 36 hours for the second time when you come through Oklahoma City as a must stop. Is that the type of stuff you're talking about?
Well, I think so, yeah. And also just from a mindset standpoint, from what I understand and, our email correspondence back and forth and some of the energy I've seen, I mean, just moving inventory out, actually finding a good way to close a store and move into a new chapter in your life.
Oh, yeah,
Starting
I
to
love
understand
that.
that mindset, all that stuff. It seems like you've taken, a situation that some people would just not be able to deal with, and you've actually found a way to make that transition, and now you're moving into a new chapter. And I think that's great. I think that's an important mindset to have.
Well, I think that mindset comes from RichDad, though, to think outside the box, to hire a professional. The most expensive thing you can do is to try to do it yourself. When you look at the fees or the cost of classes or the cost of a mentorship, you think, wow, that's a lot of money. But the other thing French Cowgirl taught me is it's taught me some very expensive lessons that I will not repeat. And probably one of the things back in 2008 when I became, and 2008 incidentally was the best year for French Cowgirl. Probably one of the things that was the most impactful was sitting in those classes and listening and thinking, you can make money doing this, and I have a retail store, and why am I doing that? And because there are so many things involved with, and when people ask me what I'm going to do next, I'm telling I'm going to trading, getting back into the classes and all that, and they're like, oh, isn't that risky? And I'm like, no, let me tell. Maybe if you don't have mentors, if you don't have coaches, if you don't have the classes, then it's definitely risky. But let's just talk about owning a retail store and going to market and dropping 25, 30,000 per market. And I was going to 2 markets because I had clothing and I had gifts. Buying just on your gut and some advice from your reps, but that they just want to sell you something. They don't really care if it's going to be successful in your store. And then you commit to that $20,000, $30,000, then you're wide open to, is the product going to be as was shown? Are they going to deliver it in a timely manner? Then you have the process of putting it in inventory, which means in the computer, unpacking it. And then you have the deal of merchandising, and then you go to selling. So you have this huge lag of time where you've spent money before you even get to create a profit.
Well, and I think all of that are lessons that have taken time to learn, but the mindset change that you've embraced since you started putting yourself around people who understand opportunity cost and the cost of time and not having the right people around them, can give that advice out and help you structure your business in a way to become more profitable. I'll tell you a story real quick. When I was a kid, I grew up building houses. My dad, we grew up with 6 boys and a girl. There's 7 kids in my mom and dad's family, that my brothers and sisters we grew up with. And my dad saw his sons, and my dad's a product of a coal miner and a nurse, who up until the 1980s, they had, an outhouse, not even indoor plumbing, literally. And they had dirt floors until probably the late 70s, early 80s. They grew up in not poverty, but not exactly, the modern comforts that we're used to. So my dad grew up hard. And he saw his boys playing video games, and he says, this ain't going to work. So when I was about 13, my dad started a construction company. And the sole purpose of this construction company was to build a house or 2 every year and make his boys work on it so that they would learn a skill and not become lazy and the product of modern technology. Pretty much, I know that's why he did it. Talked to him plenty of times. But what happened is my dad is also the product of his environment as well. And so he had a hard time hiring people to come in and make his business more efficient. Construction comes down to there's a reason why we have subcontractors. You got somebody who does the landscaping, somebody who lays the cement, somebody who frames it, somebody who does the sheetrock, the wiring, the plumbing, the whole thing.
Right.
And that's
I'm
because
very
you
familiar.
you can become efficient with it. And he would not pay somebody to sheetrock it. He paid somebody to plumb it because he didn't want to have any problems. He paid somebody to do electrical because we weren't experts at it. But he was bound and determined to have us put the sheetrock up. And after enough years, we found out that, we became good at it. But for the longest time, Shelle, it would take us 3 or 4 weeks on a job that probably should have only taken 4 or 5 days for a sheetrock subcontractor. And we kept battling with Dad. We're like, listen, why don't we hire that crew over there that we've seen just knock that house out same size in 4 days that it takes us 4 weeks to do, and we can work on other projects. He wouldn't do it. Too stubborn to do it. And it took a long time until he finally said, you know what, these guys are probably right. Let's bring in somebody to finish some of these projects and make them a lot quicker. Because if you got to pay your workers 4 weeks of labor time, and then you're all taking them away from something they could be working on with something else, like finishing the roof or whatever, it's opportunity cost. So you have to bring people in to help you with your life. In trading, investing, business, they might be mentors, might be a coach. It might cost money to do it. But if it's going to take you 2 years to self-study, and you might have self-studied your way into a bad system that doesn't even work, didn't you really pay for it anyway?
Exactly.
And I see that all the time. I work with people who are having to make the decision. Do I pay for training, or do I try to go learn it from a book? And obviously, reading books is not bad for you. It's good for you. It makes you understand a different perspective. But if you don't put people on your team, it's going to take you longer. There's no other way around it. If you don't put yourself around people, and you've learned that in this investing world, you've gotten to know Matt and myself and people like Ray, and you've had classes and network.
I've had Noah.
Yeah, Noah. Talk a little bit about the importance of having those traders in your life.
Well, when you come across, I think number one, it's interesting to see that there are different styles of trading. But the biggest thing is discipline. I think, or that's what I've garnered from you guys, is discipline, and to obviously practice the techniques that you are going to use or that appeal to you. Practice on paper before you jump in with your real money.
Yeah.
That, to me, that's been invaluable, and having your daily routine that you do. And I think I'll be really good at that. I've been good at it, juggling the store while I was working by myself in the labs, and was pretty difficult because I wanted to be so focused on the trading classes, but yet I still had a lease I had to fulfill, and I still had customers coming in, and I enjoyed them. But probably since 2008, I have known that unless I could get that team together for French Cowgirl, which ironically now at the end, I'm meeting some people that handle things better than I do. But I knew 2008, if it was something that I was going to do on my own, and it would be trading, even though it wouldn't be totally on my own in the aspect of having classes and mentors and coaches. It still was ultimately up to me. It wasn't dependent upon whether or not someone likes something. It's on my good judgment and applying the training and the discipline that it takes.
Well, and throughout all of this, you also had some personal challenges that you dealt with.
Yeah. I March of 2008, ironically, my ex-husband of 28 years left me. And we had his business. He was an entrepreneur. He had a plumbing manufacturer's rep firm and did very well. We went from, when we got married, we were making $30,000 a year, and when he divorced me, we were over $450,000. And I just thought that the world was fair and that it was going to work out. I wasn't the one misbehaving in the marriage. And I have the same judge that in the Continental Resource divorce. and wound up getting about 5% of what we should have had or what I should have gotten, all the debt and no income producing assets. So I was so thankful that I had already invested in RichDad education, and I suffered post-traumatic stress syndrome from it just by the sheer absurdity of what someone can do to your life that's in a black robe.
Yeah.
And
I'll tell you, I think for anybody going through, I mean, if you know somebody for 28 years, and I know this from personal experience, I've had my mother and my father recently got divorced, probably 3 or 4 years ago. I can't remember the exact date, but they were together for almost 40 years. If you're with somebody for that amount of time, it's going to shake you, even if it was a toxic relationship or if it was the greatest relationship, because you've had that person in your life for that amount of time, right? And, I, as a mentor, I actually took this quiz online the other day, Shelle, and it was like one of those dumb Facebook quizzes where you click it and it tries to tell you what your profession is. And I answered all the questions, and it told me that I was a psychotherapist. And I had to laugh at that because as a mentor and a teacher, over the years, I have gotten into more conversations that have to do with personality and life and religion and context and, philosophy and the way to live your life and mindset stuff. As many of those conversations as I have, like, this is what a candlestick is, or this is what a trend is. To really mentor someone well, you have to get to know them as a person and how they click and how they move forward. And, when we deal with challenges like that, it can derail some of our business goals and our education. How did you bounce out of that? How did you say, at what point did you say, you know what, I'm dealing with all this, but I got to focus on what I'm building from a mindset standpoint and move it forward?
Honestly, it was like my bright light. It was the only hope I had because I was the Supreme Court in Oklahoma. I was questioned extensively about RichDad education on the stand and was totally unprepared to give them a testimony of what my classes were about, what I planned to do with them, all of that. It was a joke to them. And then the Supreme Court of Oklahoma waited 2 years because they totally ignored the law. And my attorney said, you know what, you've got to appeal. He was a new judge. He was like, you have to appeal this. It wouldn't be the right thing to do. So as I'm losing partners, my business is 2008. It was like that was our best year. And so it was growing quicker than I could kind of keep up with it. Really, the classes and RichDad were just the thing that said, okay, I'm going to be okay once, no matter what. Mm-hmm. And so I can't say honestly that I maintained it. I just knew I would go back to it when I would have time. And even with my mentorship with Matt, I feel kind of bad for him because it was probably like working with a kindergartner. But it was something that I needed that gave me, doing that mentorship, if nothing else, gave me absolute hope again that I can pull myself out of this and rise and show them. They called me a mildly educated woman in my 50s that didn't need her $400,000 house. And though the ruling was unfair, the vagueness of Oklahoma law didn't prevent the judge from rendering that kind of judgment. And again, they went back to the frivolous spending of RichDad education. So I'm pretty, once I picked myself up from that, it's just been a slow process of prodding along, trying to find my way and not giving up.
Yeah. And it's funny how people are, it's interesting the way the world is. The people who come through a certain type of education, traditional education, for example, master's degree, PhD, get a law degree, get a doctoral, whatever it is. I mean, anything outside of that is almost like an internal challenge to what they spent so much money and time doing. And it's not that one necessarily has to replace another, But paying for mentors and surrounding yourself with good teachers, I don't know how that could ever be seen as a bad idea. But the thing about the law is it moves slow and it takes time. And at the time, you weren't getting the training you needed because you were kind of dealing with all this stuff. And then you jump back in and you had your mentorship. And you got to sit with Matt and talk. And even though you probably felt like, oh, I'm overwhelmed because, I'm such a beginner, you still made progress.
Yeah, no, he broke it down for me. There was he broke it down for me. I just know now with a clear head, and I think I even mentioned to you guys, I see myself taking another mentorship. I think I'm going to have much more of a focus on the type trader that I want to be, rather than just looking at it as a whole. As I've done this before. I've managed a portfolio before, our personal one. I really like it. It's fun. It's challenging. I think I'll just know more of the type of trader I want to be in the stages of the trading that as I build my portfolio back, what I will want to do.
Sure.
And be guided in.
One of the reasons why I wanted to interview you on the podcast is because of that renewed mindset. I've been doing this long enough to know that, some people jump in and they just take off right away. And in the first month, they're already kicking butt. They're already trading. They're already active. They're right on top of it. But other people have challenges that come up, whether it be business or personal or life or whatever, even health challenges for some people. And
right.
I think you have to dig deep in a situation like that and try to remind yourself, this is why I started this journey to begin with. It's to embrace a new mindset. It's to embrace, that I can take my time back and my freedom back and I can overcome. One of the great things about embracing the rich dad mindset, or somebody like, the Anderson Law Firm, when they talk about tax and asset protection, or the mentors, the different ways they approach trading, is that it's really about freedom. Because the markets, you can access them anywhere. You can build a business on what you want to work on. There's not just one way to do it. I wrote a newsletter over the weekend over there at tackletrading.com, and I put it out there, and I talked about finding your voice. And I used an analogy. I love stand-up comedians. And it's one of the things I listen to. And I'm not a stand-up comic, believe me. If I got up on stage, I don't know if I could get very many laughs. I'm sure it's one of the hardest things in the world to do. But one of the reasons I love it, and one thing I really look for when I'm listening to a comic is, do they have a unique voice and perspective? I mean, sure, they can tell, dumb jokes or whatever just to get a laugh. But do they at some moments, they have a perspective that's so unique and cuts so hard that it makes you think about the world in a different way? There's a guy named Bill Hicks that for me did that. He's been long since dead 20 years ago, something like that. He died of cancer at a young age. But even people like Louis C.K., or George Carlin. Now, some of these guys are crude. They wouldn't necessarily go over with all people out there. But for me, I connect with it. And one thing I love thinking about with comedians, and I think it's true of also investing and becoming a person, is you can't just tell somebody else's jokes. You have to embrace your own journey and your own mindset and get up there and say something that matters to you. And the thing with trading and investing, you can be taught how to construct a trade. You can be taught how to construct a business. You can be taught how the products work and how risks works, and you can build a foundation on that. But at some level, it's got to become yours. And that's where practice comes in, and the importance of actually putting trades on and learning from your experience really is critical. And I think you've found some of that voice yourself in terms of what motivates you to keep coming back and learning and studying and practicing, and where you want to go, and that's important. I use the word vision quite often. You have to have that vision of what you want to become, whether it's freedom or time or energy, whatever it is, to where you can capture it and you can say, this is my business and this is what I'm doing with my time. Let's talk a little bit about where you want to be. What are your goals for your trading business?
Financial freedom is the number one goal. I want to win. My motivational DNA is that of I want to win. When it's broken down, there are other things to it. I took that same Facebook quiz that you took, and they called me. They said I was a designer, which means I'm very creative, and I can see the end product before it even gets there. I have this tremendous desire to show my children and my ex-husband that I wasn't a fool for investing in RichDad education. I haven't, and it's not in a I'll show you type of way, but it's also for myself because I'm not an idiot. And the people that were indicating that I was this judge. He was a bad lawyer, because all judges in Oklahoma are bad lawyers, because they could make more money earning $250 an hour than $94,000 or $112,000 a year. And I don't want to work at Target, like they told me. They were like, you need to get a job. My first attorney told the judge that I would keep my business and go get a job making $24,000 a year. And so I really want financial freedom. I know I see me taking small steps to attain that, because in my trading in the past, I kind of like using the stock market's money more than my own. And the way that I do that is or I did on the portfolio I had, is that I would just use a certain amount or a certain percentage of what I had in my portfolio, and then build on that from profits. And at that time it was really simple trading, because I had stocks like Apple, Yahoo, Amazon, Priceline. I had those stocks, and so I just used those stop losses. Baidu was the huge hit that made a lot of money on, and just would keep those profits in the stock, and then put the money that I had in my portfolio in another area.
Well, one thing that's always interesting to me, and I love that mindset, use the market's money, build profits into other trades. Take, like Coach Gino talks about this in the scouting report quite often, where he'll put on more than one contract. He'll take, some off to pay for the other ones and let them go almost as a free ride. I think good traders have that kind of instinct, is how do I get this position to a risk-free position that I'm building off of profit on? And I love that mindset. One thing you said there that really jumped out to me that I find fascinating is how people without knowledge of how to do something or how something works have such strong opinions about that thing. It's like, I mean, look at the retail business. Would you go to a lawyer to ask you how to run the retail business? Probably not. Should we go, you want to go to retailers and marketers and people who know the online side and the marketing side and the sales side and the distribution side and the wholesale side. You want to go to experts in that field. If I want to learn how to hunt, I'm probably not going to go down to the bowling alley. Well, maybe there might be good hunters at the bowling alley, but the idea is you got to surround yourself with people who are experts at that field. And so the thing about trading and investing is it does definitely carry risk, and that's where you need training. If you're going to take it seriously, you got to be willing to build a business, build that foundation from, advice and training and guides from experienced traders, but then also build it into your own business through experience. And that's that part I was saying about finding your voice. Shelley, I tell you, I've enjoyed the conversation thoroughly. Really, really loving it. Are you, you're a loyal listener to the podcast, aren't you?
Yeah, I haven't been when I hired TW when I decided for sure I was going to close the store in October, I had to go all in, because in order to get the results that I wanted, I had to go all in. He was pretty tough, but I don't mind tough. And so I was up until that time, and I will be beginning next week after the store's dismantled.
Yeah.
Sorry
And
if
let
that's
me-
not the answer
No,
you
that's
wanted.
exactly. No,
but
that's
it's
great.
honest.
What you got to do is you got to come and go with programs like this. Obviously, keep it on your download queue. There've been some really interesting ones lately. I loved I did one where it was just me talking about my mindset and stuff. I think you should go back and check that one out. I thought it was cool, and I know that sounds
Sure, I
narcissistic,
will.
pumping
I just-
myself. But,
I just can't believe how many you guys have done. And
I know.
and I love hearing I liked listening to Steve Wong, I think.
Yeah.
He really resonated with me, and Jake Pelly, I think. He was another one that really resonated with me. Those are the ones that have stood out the most. But yeah, I'm definitely going to go back because the way I see my life now is at the gym at 6 o'clock, come back, do my daily routine, and jump in with webinars, podcasts, and paper trading just to figure out what's going on. I keep track of it through Seeking Alpha on my phone a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you guys recommend that or not. I can't remember or even why I got it, but it gives me a little bit of the pulse of what's going on without being involved in it. But yeah, I'm excited. I have nothing but I'm blocking my ears to the naysayers that I can't do it.
Well, I mean, they're not worth your time, quite frankly. And one of the things that you should always do is you should listen to what anybody has to say in life, but you should always consider, I mean, do they have the experience and the expertise to actually have a valid opinion on this? I mean, there are times, it's like going into the comment section of a website. You ever gone and read like the comment section of a news story? And they call these internet trolls. Not all opinions are equal. I can promise you that. There are plenty of people out there that should probably keep their opinions to themselves. Maybe they don't have the expertise to really have a strong opinion about something. I want to kind of maybe close on just a general topic and just ask you a question. I mean, what advice, because to me, and what you said there a minute ago is really dead on. Those podcasts with Steve and Jake and even Christian, those were some of my favorites. I mean, we've interviewed institutional traders and authors, and Matt and I have gotten on and ranted about politics and all that. We've had all kinds of different conversations.
I love it when you guys do that. You're so funny.
We are nuts, aren't we? But
I didn't say nuts. I said you're funny.
Oh, I know, but I said nuts.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Self-proclaimed. I have no problem with it. But I'll tell you, my favorite conversations are with my students and people who are focused on how to build this business and are putting the time in as a beginner, because I connect with that. I've been a trainer for 10 years. I have had one of the things I'm probably as much of an expert in as anything is people and learning styles, and how somebody actually can consume information and then produce something positive in their own life. I've traded, and I can teach people what the definitions are. But one of the things I've always connected with, and I think what I really hang my hat on as a mentor, is really connecting with that person and trying to learn about them and help them the way that their brain works. And that's not always easy. And so when I get a chance to talk to students and new traders or even experienced traders, I'm constantly trying to connect to that mindset thing and maybe talk to somebody out there, because I'm sure there's somebody listening who's thinking, I'm listening, I'm hearing this. I've also dealt with challenges. I've also dealt with things that have felt like hurdles in my way, businesses, or I got laid off, or I went through some personal problem or health problem, and now here I am. What encouragement or advice would you give that person who may be still trying to find their motivation or their mindset?
Never, ever give up and believe in yourself, and seek as much positive reinforcement as you can. It doesn't even have to be about trading, but just on life. And realize that one thing I've learned about is that everybody, absolutely everybody, goes through a really pit time in their life. And you've just got to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep going. And some days it's only putting one foot in front of the other, and it's looking at, okay, what did Matt tell me I was supposed to do today? Okay, briefing, page 1, and look at that, and just keep. I don't know how to give up. That's probably, that may be one of my downfalls, is that I just don't know how to give up, because I'm going to give it my best, and I don't like to lose. And that was the hardest part of my divorce, was losing, because people I didn't really respect were dictating my life and having no control over it.
Yeah. I'll tell you, as the wise Taylor Swift would say, haters gonna hate, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No time for that. Focus on the positive. Bring positive people in your life that can help you build processes. And right there, even great advice right at the end. Focus on your structure. The reason we have routines, the reason why we have step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, even the simple stuff like starting with the news, then going into the markets, is so that when we turn the computer on and we go to trade, we know how to move through the information and then arrive at a conclusion, make a decision. Yeah. Shelle, it's been great having you on the podcast from the Trading Justice Podcast. This is Tim Justice, and we're presented by TackleTrading.com. Over at TackleTrading.com, you can get the scouting report as a pro member, where you can get Coach Gino's picks on a weekly basis. We write newsletters on Sundays. Those come out for rookie and pro members. And if you just want to be a visitor and join us in the clubhouse and talk trading, we put lots of free videos and free blogs and all kinds of content out there for the trading community. So again, Shelle, thank you. And everybody else out there, we'll see you down the road.
Thanks.
You've been listening to the Trading Justice Podcast. If you've enjoyed yourself and think that the conversations and topics we've covered are important, help spread the word. Give us your feedback. 5 stars on iTunes, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. The Trading Justice Podcast is proudly sponsored by TackleTrading.com. Get off the sidelines and get in the game.